Please, please.
Warm greetings from technical team on Earth IOE Graduate Conference. We are pleased to welcome Professor Dr. Haridarshan Shrestha as a chairperson for session F2 on theme disaster risk management. I also will like to welcome all the presenters and participants on this session. Each presenter will have 11 minutes maximum for the presentation and maximum 5 minutes for the discussion, question answer sessions. The participants can ask the question by raising their hands or using chat features of Zoom. So I humbly request to the chairperson to begin the session. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. First of all, I would like to invite all of you on this technical session F, basically on the area of disaster risk management and disaster risk reduction. Colleague, paper presenter, and other participants. We do have a 5 paper presentation, mainly on the area of disaster risk reduction and disaster risk management. Ground rule has been already explained by my colleague. We have to stick on the time and the ground rule. And I would like to encourage all participants to involve on the discussion and also to put the questions to the author or the presenter. Now, I would like to invite the first paper presenter, Sunil Nirola, to present his paper, and his theme is Study on Flood Inundation Mapping for Ratua River Catchment Using HERCAS 2D. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Can I start?
Please go ahead.
Respected session chair, Professor Dr. Haridarshan Shrestha, sir, distinguished guest, organizing committee, participants, and my dear friends. Today, I am here to present a paper on study on flood inundation mapping for Ratua River catchment using HERCAS 2D. This is going to be my presentation outline with introduction, study area, land use pattern, methodology, flood estimation, result and discussion, and its effect on land use, and finally conclusion. As you know that Nepal is rich in water resource potential. In Nepal, rivers originate from mighty Himalayas, Mahabharat range, and Chure range. Rivers originating from Chure are among the least studied river system in Nepal because there's lack of proper gauging station along the rivers originating from Chure range. Flood and erosion are most common water-induced hazard in Nepal. Flooding causes lots of harm to human life, property, livestock, and crops every year. Different kind of hydraulic models like HERCAS are used in simulating the flooding events to support the decision-making process regarding the prediction of flood and prevention its effect. Hence, this study demonstrates 2D flood mapping capability of HERCAS, and same has been applied in Ratua River catchment to obtain extent of flooding for various return period of flood, mainly 2 years, 25 years, and 50 years of return period. And its effect on land use of the study area has been presented using GIS software. In the images below, we can see how the flooding has affected the villages and cultivation land in the Tarai region of Nepal. So this is my study area. It is a Ratua River catchment. This is a Ratua River, and this is a Mawa River, which is a major tributary of Ratua River. The total catchment area of Ratua is 400.66 kilometers square, in which 152.54 kilometers square of catchment lies in the Chure range of Nepal. Damak is a city which lies in the eastern bank of Ratua River, and it gets flooded each and every year due to various flood events, and lots of loss to human life and property occurs every year. Along the south, the Ratwa River flows along the border of Morang and Japa districts. This is the land use pattern in my study area. As you know that Tarai region is our bread and basket for Nepal. Hence, the land use of the study area is dominated by cultivated land, which accounts for 217.01 square kilometer, followed by forest and grasslands. The human settlement in the study area is mainly concentrated towards the Mahendra Highway and sparsely populated along the Chure region. So this is the methodology of my study. The methodology has been divided into three parts: processing of digital elevation model, that means extraction of hydraulic property of the model, extraction of geometric data and various other parameters from the terrain. And the second is the processing of hydrological data, that means processing of rainfall data for generation of flood discharge and unsteady flood hydrograph for various return period of flood. And the third phase is the comparison of the obtained inundation mapping with the inundation mapping obtained from the satellite imagery database. That means the satellite imagery database from 1990 to 2015 has been analyzed, and the same has been compared with the flood inundation mapping obtained from the model. So this is the 2D study flow, 2D flow area of the study area. The first we need to define a 2D flow area where the computational mesh is going to be generated. Hence, this is the 2D flow area in which 50 meter by 50 meter spatial resolution mesh has been created for computation. The upstream boundary condition for the study area is given as a unsteady flood hydrograph, whereas the downstream boundary condition is given as a normal depth of water with a bed slope of 0.002, which has been obtained from the terrain database. Finally, the hydraulic property table of the study area has been computed. The next part is the estimation of flood, which is going to be applied to the study area. Schneider unit hydrograph method has been used for generation of flood of various return period, 2 years, 25 years, and 50 years. The study area has been divided into 5 number of sub-basins. Each sub-basin is located in a particular geographic location of the study area. And flood discharge for each and every sub-basin for various return period of flood has been estimated. Only one rain gauge station, number 1408, located at Damak, is located in our study area, which has been used for generation of flood discharge. Now we are here for result and discussion. The image over here shows the variation of inundation depth, how the flooding depth occurs along the study area for various return period flood. For 2 years flood, it was observed that 3,671.94 hectares of land was inundated with mean depth of inundation as 0.95 meter. For 25 years, 5,020 hectares of land was inundated with 1.12 meter of mean inundation depth. For 50 years flood, 5,589 hectares of land was inundated with 1.14 meter of mean inundation depth. Now this is all about effect of inundation on various land use. Since the land use of the study area was dominated by cultivated land, we can observe here that cultivation land has been hugely affected by the flooding event. 1,943.74 hectares of cultivation land was inundated by 2 years of flood, and similarly the flooding has been greater for forest and bushes and grasses. We can observe that 36% of rise can be observed between the inundation of 2 years and 25 years flood. The image over here shows how the inundation has affected various land use in the study area for 2 years, 25 years, and 50 years of flood. As per the validation part, inundation area as per the Rashtrapati Chure Conservation Program was obtained to be 5,797.6 hectare. This result was obtained by observing the satellite imagery database of flooding events from 1990 to 2015, and the result has shows close correlation with the result obtained from our model, which is 5,020.32 hectares. Hence, we can say that HECRAS model can be useful in simulating the flood events for various different period of flood. Now I am here with the conclusions. From this study, we can conclude that effect of flooding on Ratwar Khola catchment was studied using ECRAS 2D unsteady flood analysis. ECRAS 2D analysis can be used as a proven technology in flood studies. Inundation map was generated, which is useful in demarcating hazardous zones. It serves as an important tool in decision making during infrastructure development and planning, like which kind of infrastructure can be developed in particular area, whether that particular area is hazardous to flood events or not. It can also be developed in crafting early flood warning system, thus saving life and property of the people living around the floodplains of the study area. These are some of the references which I have gone through. Thank you. Any questions, please?
Thank you, Mr. Sunil, for your very good presentation on very important area. Basically, a lot of information can be used by the planner and also the professional who are working on disaster risk management, basically on response and recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And now I would like to ask Floor to put the question or any comments. Floor is open now for discussion. Any questions? Seems we do not have any questions from floor. Therefore, we will move to second presenter. And I do have some observation, and I will express my observation at the last of all presentation. Thank you very much, Sunil.
Thank you,
And
sir.
now I request the second paper presenter, Mr. Ajay Yadav, and I was informed that Ajay Yadav is absent and his co-author is presenting. And his paper is on sediment simulation and impact of land cover changes using SWOT model in Karnali Basin. Please, Mr. Ajay Yadav's co-author, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Sir, can I go ahead?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Respected all, I am Surendra Mahajan from Water Resource Department, and I'm currently pursuing my master's thesis, and I'm going to present my thesis on sediment study of using SWOT, sediment study and land cover changes using SWOT model in Karnali Basin. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. As this template depicts, my title is Sediment Simulation and Land Cover Changes using SWOT Model in Karnali Basin. I'm going to start my presentation with the objective of the presentation. The main objective of my study is to calibrate SWOT model in terms of runoff and sediment yield to simulate the impact of land use changes. Land use changes, creating a hypothetical case like changing forest land and grassland to barren to analyze the impact of land cover change of year 1990, 2000, and 2010. This study might be very helpful while developing hydropower projects where we can design different part of the hydropower networks like undersluice, descender. As we can see that there are a lot of sediment flushing problem in the current scenario when it comes to Nepal. Next slide, I'm going to show the study area basin. As I said, my study is on Karnali Basin. Karnali River is located in the northern east part of Nepal, and it forms a major part of Ganges River in India, which cuts through the Himalayas of Nepal. As you can see, Phuket and Betan are the 2 points in the stretch of the Karnali River, which catchment are 16,000 kilometers for Phuket and 22,000 kilometers square for Betan. I used SWOT model to demonstrate the effect of land use change in the sediment. SWOT model uses these input data like DEM, stream definition, land use, soil, slope, and weather station. After computing the parameters and optimization, SWOT computes a model and delivers a result, and we can analyze the result. SWOT uses a simple Muesli equation to predict the sediment yield, which is depicted in the equation. Sediment yield equals to 11.8 Q surface into cubic into area HRU times 0.5 power into K Usle, C Usle, P Usle, LS factor, and CFGR, where K Usle is the soil erodibility factor, C Usle is the cover and management practice, LS Usle is the slope factor, and P Usle is the practice factor. This is the result that I obtained from the SWOT model, Foucault and Beaton. As you can see that these graphs are closely related, and I compared them with the parameters like R square and Nash efficiency. In Foucault, for the flow, the R square value is 0.78 and the Nash square value is 0.73. Whereas for sediment, the R square value is 0.6 and the Nash efficiency value is 0.6 as well. For Beaton, the flow for the R square value for the flow is 0.81 and the Nash efficiency value for the flow is 0.7. Whereas for sediment, 0.68 and 0.63. Furthermore, we changed a portion of the catchment into barren land to see the sediment yield in the outlet. For the first scenario, we converted 10% of the whole forest into barren. And for the remaining scenario, we did the same, but the forest type were changed and the grassland were also changed. As we can see, the results are presented in the 6 different figures. This is for scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, scenario 4, scenario 5, and scenario 6. As we can see that a rise in the flow triggers a rise mechanism in the sediment volume as well. This is the land use database of Foucault and Beaton catchment. These different acronyms are the land use, forest, and grassland, which are present in the Foucault and the Beaton catchment. And at last, we also compare the sediment yield in terms of tons per hectare per year in Foucault and Beaton, and we compare it with the Asaragad hydro gauge station, which is located in Karnali River 240 gauging station. And we can see that for Foucault, the catchment area was 16,000, and the Asaragad catchment, which was 20,000 kilometers square, and the sediment produced in Foucault is comparatively less as compared to the Asaragad station. Whereas for Beaton catchment, the catchment of the Beaton was 22,000 kilometers square and the Asaragad was 20,000 kilometers square. So Beaton catchment has a higher sediment yield when compared with Asaragad station and Foucault station. The final conclusion. The conclusion of my study is that the extent of impact of conversion of land or grassland to barren land on flow and sediment hydraulics of the river due to infrastructure development in the basin is very sensitive to the location in the basin where changes have taken place. Removal of forest in the areas near the haddock site impart less adverse impact than removing on the far land forest. This is mainly because of conversion into steep sloping barren land susceptible to more erosion. The percentage increase in sediment load at outlet of the basin is directly proportional to the area of land use being converted. There is an apparent temporal variation in the extent of impact on flow and sediment hydraulics due to the conversion of one type of land use to another. A specific finding of the study is that numerical results show the hydraulic response to land cover change is non-linear and exhibits a threshold effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Surendra Maharjan, for your presentation. Now the floor is open for question answer or any comment, please. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, there is one question from one of the participants, Saurabh Dulal. He is asking, how does SWOT process the rainfall data? Do you understand the question?
Yes, sir.
How does SWOT process the rainfall data? Please go ahead.
Every rainfall data is provided at the CG, centroid of the SRU of the basin, and the rainfall data is provided in a text file in for each and every sub-basin. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other question? seems seems there is no questions from the floor. Yeah, basically this study also very important, as we are frequently suffering from the disasters, mainly southern part of Nepal from the flooding. Yeah, therefore this paper basically discuss on the model itself and the sediment. Yeah, but what I would like to suggest you, the basically the paper authors, is I saw your conclusion and basically your findings. That is basically something like that, mechanical output. But we have to relate this with some theory or the practices, or in other mean, we have to validate our conclusion through some sort of theory or the practices. It's not like that we run the model and we come out with this increases, this decreases. Therefore, I suggest you to go back and try to justify with the established theory or the established practices. Thank you very much, Mr. Surendra. And now we have a third paper, and paper presenter is Darshana Daubanjar, and her paper is application of automation tool, BIM, for seismic retrofitting of stone masonry with mud mortar building. Please go ahead, Darshana.
So can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darshana Daubanjar, and the topic of my presentation is application of automation tool for seismic retrofitting of stone masonry with mud mortar building. And this research has been done under the supervision of Professor Sangeeta Singh. So as we already know, it's been more than 5 years since the 2015 Gorkha earthquake has hit Nepal. But looking at the pace of reconstruction, we can say it is relatively very slow. So there are several factors that are leading to the slow process of reconstruction, and one of them being the absence of new tools and technology. So it is important that we put into consideration the quick and result-oriented technology so that the pace of reconstruction takes a faster pace. In this research, I'm going to talk about the BIM tool. BIM tool has many branches, and among them, I'm going to talk about the automation tool that comes under the BIM. BIM means Building Information Modeling. So why do we need to include new tools and technology in the process of retrofitting? Is that according to the survey conducted by Central Bureau of Statistics, they found out that the maximum number of houses that was damaged overall throughout the country were SMM buildings, that is stone masonry with mud mortar building. So among the SMM buildings, not all of the buildings were fully damaged, but there were maximum buildings that were partially damaged as well. So among the partially damaged building, it is not important that we reconstruct each and every house, but we can go with the option of retrofitting, which can be an appropriate and affordable solution. So if we include such tools and technology into the process of retrofitting, it would definitely save a lot of time. And the objective of my study is to understand how the automation tool can facilitate the process of retrofitting of SMM buildings during pre-construction phase, and to explore the applicability of tool in providing appropriate solutions. So the overall objective would be to study the importance of technology in increasing the pace of reconstruction. So my study area includes two municipalities of Makwanpur district, that is Thaha Palika and Bhimpedi Palika, which is shown in the map. Now, talking about the methodology, the overall process is a qualitative research, and I've done both descriptive as well as the exploratory research. Descriptive in a sense that I have tried to analyze how the tool has facilitated in the process of retrofitting, and exploratory in a sense to know if this tool can be used in a large scale or not. So the overall process can be summarized through the chart given here. So there are different processes. So first, what is done is a study is conducted based upon the majority of the typical houses that is present on a particular site. And the second process is based upon the major features of those buildings. A single retrofit design is prepared such that that design is implemented or that can be applied to majority of the damaged buildings. And the third step would be based upon that particular retrofit type design, a tool is prepared under BIM. That would be an automation tool. So after everything such as the type design and the tool is prepared, now for the I went to the data collection, where I went to the site and collected all the information such as the length, breadth, height, and everything that is required for the data. And then after the data is collected, then the data is processed into the tool, and the tool will suggest or help in providing the further retrofit solutions. And lastly, I did the data analysis and concluded the research. So as I mentioned earlier, most of the building that were found damaged throughout the country were SMM buildings, which can be verified by the chart shown here. This is a chart prepared by HRRP, where the light green color in the circles, they suggest that the maximum buildings that were damaged during the Gorkha earthquake were stone mud mortar buildings. So since the majority houses were SMM buildings, a study was conducted based upon their features, like the features included wall thickness or the materials that were used in those buildings, and the flooring type, the number of stories, and roofing material. These all major features were first collected when the study was conducted. Also, the second thing that was studied was the damage pattern. The damaged pattern were included such as wall delamination, where the thickness of the wall, they tend to separate from each other. And the other type of damage pattern was the heavy gable wall that tend to collapse because of its own self weight. And other failures were like out of plane, in plane failure. So based upon all the damage pattern and the features of the SMM building, a single design is prepared. Now we can go with any kind of design, like the design could be a splint bandage design or any kind of design. But for this research, I've taken the example of one design that is prepared by an organization which was approved by NRA. And based upon this design, I'll be looking if the tool can be used in a large scale or not. So for the application, further on, I went with the data collection. So for the application of automation tool, I'll be showing you the example of one house in Thahapalika. The homeowner name was Uddhav Bista. So I went to that site and collected all the information like the length, breadth, the material, the flooring material, everything, the information that is required to retrofit. And it was collected in an app. The app could be a field site or Kobo Collect or any app that can be stored as an Excel file. So after the collection of the data, I then processed it into the tool. So what the tool does is that it looks into all the information stored in an Excel file, and it will give you the existing package. So the package would include the plan, elevation, and section, and other existing set that is required for the further process. So after the existing set is prepared, then the tool checks if the building is within the safe limit or not. For instance, here the building is checking if the wall width is within the safe limit or not. The green color suggests that the wall is within the safe limit. And if there are red colors, then it will show you that no, there are some interventions required so that the building will be safe. So you can look at the table over the right side, where you can see the different red colors that is denoting that the wall piers are not safe. So we need to provide interventions like providing wire mesh or other interventions. Similarly, the other check done by the tool is the opening percentage check, where it will look at the number of the openings and the size of the openings. And if it shows that the openings are not within the safe limit, then it will give you the red light. So here we need to go with the option of closing or shifting or any half closing the openings in order to make the building safe. So these are just the few tests done by the tool, but there are remaining other tools also, remaining other checks also that that is done by this tool. So after all the checks is done, then finally a retrofit package is produced. Like you can see at the top picture, some of the openings of the buildings are closed, and the interventions like providing through concrete and wire mesh at the corners, these all are the suggestions that are provided by the tool itself. And after the retrofit package is completed, also a bill of quantities is prepared, where it will automatically generate the number of materials and the cost that is required for the construction of the building. So we can see in this one example how the tool deducts the manual effort and provides everything necessary for the further construction. So that was the example of only one building that could be retrofitted, but there are various other buildings that could be retrofitted in both Thaha Palika and Bhimpedi Palika. And for that, what I did was I took a look at the building damage assessment list that was prepared by NRA, and there were several houses that could be retrofitted. But the major buildings that were listed under grade 2 and 3 were the houses that could be retrofitted, and I filtered those houses, and then I looked if those houses could be retrofitted with using this tool or not. And upon looking and filtering those datas, I found out that in Bhimpedi Palika, 74% of the houses were feasible to be retrofitted using this tool, and in Thaha Palika, 69% were could be retrofitted using this tool. In both the cases, we can see that it exceeded more than 50%, which means with the help of this tool, we can retrofit more than half of the population of the houses. So what we can sum up is that if we look at how the tool provided these solutions, we can conclude that the manual effort was minimized with the help of this tool. To explain that, I can say that with the help of this tool, the engineers did not require to individually analyze every building, which means that we don't require to structurally analyze each every time. The tool will analyze each and every building, and upon that analyzation, what it does is it provides the solutions also. So the engineers do not require to go on with each and every building, but the tool will do cut off all the manual process and help in providing the appropriate solutions to each and every building. So in conclusion, what I can say is that such kind of new tools and technology will save a lot of time and money, and will improve the project performance, as well as it will enhance the project delivery. I illustrated only one kind of example in this presentation or in this, but if there are various other tools and technology that can be put into consideration as well. So if we do so, then it will be totally beneficial in the construction industry and will have a positive impact in future. So I recommend to make use of such tools and technology in further construction industry. So these are some of the references, and thank you.
Thank you, Darsh. Mute myself. Floor is open for question answer. Seems there is no any questions. Then the Darshana, basically, yeah, I do have some suggestion or observation. Here, this topic is very important, as you explained or mentioned in your presentation also. Normally, stone masonry doesn't exist globally or in the developed country. Yeah, therefore there is no research on the stone masonry in mud mortar. But in our case, majority of standing building after Gorkha earthquake, yeah, in the Gorkha earthquake also, as you mentioned, most of the building collapse or damages were of stone with mud mortar, because our earthquake was rural centered. Yeah. And now also, for example, we did have about 5.5 million building standing before earthquake. and about 0.8 million building collapse, and still we do have about 4.3 million building standing. Yeah, and those buildings are not earthquake resistant because we didn't apply the building code. Yeah, previously.
Yes.
Only now we are applying. Therefore, this area of research is very important. But in the same time we have to be sure, because if people will how to replicate or use these tools, then we have to be sure, or we have to validate it. Therefore, in your research, what I found is you are using one of the ready-made model, and you are checking with numbers of the building, and you concluded it can be used. Yeah, that is what you did. Yeah, but what I suggest is, basically, I don't know what is your background. Therefore, the first thing is we have to look on the tools itself, and we have to validate it with the theories. Yeah, this tools has been developed by somebody. Yeah, before the
Yes, sir.
application, it has to be validated. Yeah. Therefore, that is the one thing, and maybe you are doing the qualitative. Therefore, you didn't look on that aspect. Yeah, but when you are using, then you have to relate this with our existing buildings characteristics and building code, and also the how to say the tools itself. Therefore, you did a simple tools test with the numbers of building, and you come out with the percent of building which can be retrofitted. Yeah. And another one thing is, when you are talking, there is a two areas in the retrofitting. One is damaged building, and another is a existing building which is not earthquake resistance. Yeah. For the damaged building, it is very sensitive, because you have to understand, first of all, the magnitude of damage, because that already weaken the system itself. Yeah. Therefore, what I suggest you to go back and include some theoretical background of the tools. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The areas what these tools incorporate in, basically the structural characteristics or the structural area. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And then you have to come out with the typology of our buildings, the stone with mud mortar. You can have a case study or some area, but you have to identify first the typology, and then you have to apply this. That is how you should do. Therefore, I suggest you to go back and work little bit and make it this paper really worthy, and also the research based. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, this is just my suggestion. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
And Darshana, you have one question from Saurabh Dulal again.
Yes, sir.
What he is asking is what properties were input in BIM relating stone and mud? The properties.
Yes, sir. The properties regarding SMM buildings were not included in BIM. It was included in the structural design that was prepared by the organization, looking upon the features of the building and all the structural analysis of the buildings were done initially by the organization, and I used that approved drawing and I put it into my BIM tool, and then I did the analysis. The information were not kept in the BIM tool.
Basically, you didn't look any structural properties or structural theories. Yeah, you just
No,
use
sir.
the.
It was just I took the
use
approved drawing.
Yeah. You just use the BIM tool. Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can use any drawing like splint bandage or anything that is structurally safe. I just tried to show how the tool worked in maximum cases.
Mm-hmm. And then you have another question from Yadin Shrestha. You have considered only one case study. Is it
Yes.
enough to justify or validation of your thesis?
Yeah, like I said, I illustrated only one example in this presentation because of the time limit. But I looked at all the damage assessment list of prepared by the NRA, and there were two grades. Like there were grade 2 and grade 3, and those were the buildings that could be retrofitted according to NRA. And I looked at the properties. Like we have certain criteria. We need to look upon the building length, building height, building breadth, and every information. If they fit into our criteria, then only we can imply this tool. So I looked at the Excel file given by the NRA, and then I filtered those properties. And if they fit into my category of this tool, then only I can imply this design. So I showed you the chart at the ending of the presentation, where I told you that majority of the 50% of the buildings came under this category, and then only I concluded that this tool can be utilized. So it
Thank you.
wasn't a random.
Yeah. Thank you, Darshana. Basically, both the question is similar to my observation. Yeah. Therefore, there is a as I mentioned to you, you have to little bit linked with the theoretical background. Now, for example, you explain about the length, height, basically the slenderness ratio, percent of opening, whatever it is. Yeah. Therefore, these all are dictated by the code. Yeah. Therefore, you have to mention these things, and you have to elaborate little bit of BIM tool itself, in what theory is based this tool itself. Yeah. And you said you took as a reference one of the design by one of the organization. That also you have to validate the first, then only we can go ahead. Yeah. Thank you very much. No, anyway, this is the very important area. Yeah, because we are waiting the earthquake in Western Nepal. As expert says, it's due from the 500 years. Yeah, and most of the buildings in the Western Nepal are of stone with more masonry. Therefore, it is very high time to re-strengthen or retrofit those buildings, so that we will have a minimum casualties or minimum loss. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Now we have a fourth paper, and paper presenter is a Neera Shrestha. She has a paper on post-earthquake 2015 reconstructed school design, basically school design with the thermal comfort and visual comfort analysis. Case study design at Lalitpur district. Please, Neera, go ahead.
Hello, sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Neera Shrestha, and today I'm presenting on post-disaster reconstruction, thermal and visual comfort analysis of reconstructed school building after Gorkha earthquake 2015, case of type design of Lalitpur district. First of all, I'd like to thank IUE Graduate Conference for providing this platform, and my coordinator, Dr. Sanjay, my supervisor, Dr. Sanjay Upeti. I'd like to start with my introduction part. As we all know, school is an important part of public building since the children attend school for a long period and good indoor thermal condition must be guaranteed. And indoor environment comfort means thermal comfort, visual comfort, indoor air quality, acoustic comfort. And as we know, during April 2015, 8,242 public schools were damaged, and NRA immediately took a step to build 7,553 schools. By now, only 5,380 schools have been completed fully or partially, and remaining are under construction or yet to be started. And after earthquake, what we can see is more emphasis is put onto structural aspect rather than thermal comfort and lighting aspect, which are also of prime importance. And other thing is post-occupancy of type design is missing in regard to indoor comfort of student. My objective of this research are to explore and overview thermal comfort and visual comfort of type design of school building, to analyze thermal comfort and visual comfort of type design using Ecotech as simulation tool and students respond to this condition in their classroom, to come up with recommendation to improvise thermal and visual comfort of school building. This is my methodology chart from selection level to conclusion and recommendation. And for survey analysis, I use structure questionnaire, and for analysis, I have used Autodesk, Ecotech, and Microsoft Excel. Let's have a quick look at literature part. As Lone Water as described in one sentence, school is a building which has 4 walls with tomorrow inside. And thermal comfort is defined as a human perception with respect to temperature, humidity, and air velocity. And different factors affecting personal comfort include gender, age, race, etc. And for Nepal, in context of Nepal, adaptive comfort range is 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. And from repeat studies, so that students prefer cooler environment and are more sensitive to warm conditions. And describing about visual comfort according to European standard, it is a subjective condition of visual well-being, an important factor to achieve safe and comfortable indoor environment. And a minimum illumination level for office and classes is 250 lux, whereas for lobby 200 lux. These are the materials that I have selected for my simulation. For research area, as we know that Nepal was hit by 2 massive earthquakes during 2015, and 14 districts were affected, and one being the Lalitpur district. And I have chosen my research area as Lalitpur district. Immediately after earthquake took place, the emergency school reconstruction program project was carried out by central level program implementation unit on the different organization, and JICA was one of the donor agency which supported 6 affected districts, and Lalitpur district was one of them. And from 21 school constructed supported by JICA, I have selected 4 schools as shown in the table. This is the first school I have selected, Path Pradarshak Secondary School, then Sri Mahakali Devi IS Secondary School, Tika Vidyashram, and then Gupteswar Mabi. And this Path Pradarshak Secondary School I have used for my simulation tool, since it covers the type design that were constructed during earthquake. These are the parameters considered in simulation tool. 3 cases were selected, and 1 additional case was analyzed to determine the effect of different variables on building comfort. Best case is the existing scenario, and I have altered material in the case B, whereas in case C I have used the optimum materials and designs, and in case D I have provided alternative for RAM auth only. And these are the findings from my Ecotech analysis, where we can see difference of 132 hours in building materials are altered and openings at attic and doors. That means 10% reduction in discomfort hour is noted, as we can see in the table and chart in comparative chart over here. And for my visual analysis, what I've done is I have selected the ground floor classroom, which receives the minimum light level, and from Ecotech analysis we could see that we only receive 81.66 lux minimum illumination in the room. And for this I made changes in the door. In door I have kept the glass panel so that light could enter. From again I carried out analysis where we can see 201 lux, and as from literature review we can see that 200 lux is the minimum. So more or less by little bit of intervention we were able to obtain a correct amount of light. For validation of my simulation, I carried out survey analysis. From 1 to 4, these are my thermal comfort analysis questionnaire, whereas from 5 to 8, those were visual comfort analysis questionnaire. I took 4 school, and I chose this 4 school on the basis of the region, such as urban, suburban, and then rural. And total 163 participants took place, where around 90% were students and 10% were teachers. And this chart at the right shows that the activities carried out during 15 minutes. And these are the respondents' response to thermal comfort. And from here we can see for thermal sensation, as this survey was carried out during winter, we can see that children feeling cold were maximum. Similarly, temperature preference, they prefer warmer temperature since they felt cold. And similarly, there was a cross ventilation, so they felt slightly busy in the classroom. And the next one is humidity. For humidity, they consider it to be just right. And respondent respond to visual comfort. For visual comfort, as we can see, there was no major problem in the simulation. And as this respondents also believe that the room was bright and natural light was adequate. And for glare sensation, they complain glare sensations in their whiteboard sometimes, and they use their artificial light sometimes during cloudy days. And I have come up with some conclusion and recommendation from my analysis and findings. As we know that thermal comfort and visual comfort is important factor in the design of educational building, as it increases productivity, promotes a healthy and pleasant environment. Both survey data and Ecotech data responded the classroom to be discomfortable in case of thermal comfort, whereas satisfactory cases for visual comfort. Building envelopes such as 300 mm RAM or decrease thermal discomfort hour. And in case of unavailability of those materials, AAC block and hollow concrete block can be used as alternative. And similarly, single glazing glass is preferable since we did not find a significant changes when we use double glazed glass. And as we know that single glass is more cheaper and easy to maintain. And the south projection provided is effective for as it is used as a solar shading device. And insulation at the flooring of the ground floor decrease discomfort hour in winter. Similarly, GI sheet to be replaced by decorative roofing and providing insulation at roof, and providing opening at attic, which is open in summer for air circulation and kept closed during winter. And as we can see from all analysis, that visual comfort can be obtained by passive technique, but whereas passive technique alone cannot solve thermal discomfort. So active source such as fan can be used in summer and heater can be used in winter. Those are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, Neera, for your nice presentation. Now floor is open for question answer and comment, if any. I request participants to put the question. Yeah, I see one questions for Neera from Sunil Nirola. His question is, was the survey done for modified design?
The survey is done for the type design. Those were built by this after earthquake. NRA has constructed building for this reconstructed building for schools, and in those school post occupancy was more or less checked through the survey analysis.
Yeah, but what his question is, as I understand from his question, there is a revision on the prototype design or the
Yes, sir.
modification. Therefore, he is asking, although you also check with the modified design or not. That may his question. Basically,
Yeah.
there is a prototype design, and some
Yes,
of the
sir.
building were constructed according to that prototype design. And
sir.
from the question, what I assume is that there should be some modification on the prototype design, and
Yes,
later
sir.
on, maybe construction goes with this modified design. Therefore, whether you check with this modified design or not, that was the question.
Yeah, I have checked with modified design.
Modified
as well.
design also. Okay.
Yeah.
Then another, you have another question
Yes,
from Jasmine Sake.
Yes.
She is asking why the schools reconstructed in different climate zone was not considered.
Because I have seen, particularly seen of Lalitpur district only, because I didn't go very far, because I have only done at Lalitpur district since it lies in Kathmandu Valley, and if we do not consider the nearest one, it will be difficult for us to consider other districts. So I chose for Lalitpur district since it is easily accessible and it has not been done before as well.
Yeah, but Nirab, I think this is it, the question. Yeah, there is no further question. Basically, when you do the research,
Yes, sir.
you have to justify with research. You cannot say you don't have time or money or something else. That is not the excuses, because research, you have to do the research, and your case study should validate or should justify it. You cannot just take a case study where is accessible or easy or something like that. When you do the research, you can have a case study or the certain area, but this area or this case study has to, represent the cases. Yeah, that is why he is asking the question, I assume. Okay, then there is no question, and I do have some observation and suggestion to you, as this is a research paper. This is not only the thesis. Yeah, this is the research paper. Yeah, there one of the thing, there are so many research has been carried out in this particular area of comfort of the student, because the knowledge itself impacted by the comfort or the classroom environment. Yeah, therefore they had developed this certain standard also. I didn't hear from you those research or those standards. Therefore in your I'm not sure, but because I hadn't seen your paper. Maybe in your paper you have included all these things. If not, you have to go through those research. What is the impact? Basically, there are so many research on particular in this area, and they have a finding. There is a effect or the impact of the classroom environment or this thermal comfort even in the knowledge, and also the dropout. Students are drop out, because of hot or cold, whatever it is. Yeah, therefore you have to mention this literature also here, and then only you can check with the school buildings design and practices in our context. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Nirad, that is my suggestion.
Thank
And
you, sir.
now we have a last paper that is from the Srishti Sake. Her paper is on role of architects in building disaster resilient communities. Floor is yours. Please, Srishti, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Srishti Sakya, and I'm going to give presentation on role of architects in building disaster resilient communities. This was a research that was done in group, and my group members include Aisha Joshi and Jasmine Sake. Starting with the background, disaster and architecture appears to be unrelated, but history shows the connection. It is true that a powerful disaster can flatten an entire city or town, but amid the tragedy, there is an opportunity, a blank slate for the architects to build and rebuild an entire community. Uh, Moving on to the need of research, the built environment is facing challenges every day, and these are caused by the disaster, climate change, environmental degradation, and population growth. Overcoming these challenges will increase the role of architect in creating the building and community resilience. There is a need of promoting the concept of resilience in architecture. The research objectives are to understand the role of architects and architectural process of design in building resilient communities through literature review, to investigate the works done by architects in disaster management, and to review the existing policy for mainstreaming policy provisions for stakeholder participations. For the research design, qualitative approach is used to explore, analyze, and understand the perception. The methodology consists of 4 phases. The first phase includes the identification of the problem and development of research plan. The second phase includes the comprehensive literature review. The third phase includes the semi-structured interview with different architects, and the fourth phase includes the conclusion and recommendations. So what are the roles of architects? The role of architects are divided in 3 phases of the disaster. In pre-disaster and during disaster, the role of architect is to design transitional shelter, ensuring social and religious costumes, design relief shelters for essential services such as medical facilities, develop survey methods to facilitate the repair and reconstruction of dwellings and heritage buildings, and work as an active member of social survey teams. The role of architect in post-disaster is to do the supervision of buildings that are constructed, to provide the training in construction, retrofitting, and maintenance of building, identify the contribution communities are making to dwellings and not dwellings, and feed that into cost models, and reducing vulnerability and building community resilience. There are various policies for architects' involvement in building resilient communities after the disaster. FEMA has introduced community planners to policies for rebuilding and recovery after disaster. It translates the design from the realm of ideas to physical forms. It has also equipped its planners and others involved in the post-disaster reconstruction with the tools needed to create or recreate communities that will withstand natural disaster. Similarly, American Institute of Architects has also oriented toward using architects' existing skill set to address different phases of a disaster. It shows architects everywhere how they can work with local government to prepare for and to respond to disaster and enhance community resilience through participation in border planning efforts. In case of Nepal, post-disaster recovery framework was prepared under the leadership of NRA in consultation with key stakeholders. It provides a systematic, structured, and prioritized framework for implementing recovery and reconstruction. It brings together all the important actors, government, NGOs, and INGOs to plan and implement the earthquake recovery and reconstruction program in Nepal. To shed more light on the works that are done by architects, we have done some case studies to show the example of notable works that have been done by the architects in disaster management. The first example includes the Women's Center, which is located in Pakistan. It was designed by Yasmin Larry. Yasmin Larry is a Pakistani best architect and has built over 36,000 homes for flood and earthquake victims. She uses ancient architectural techniques and teaches the people in village to rebuild their own houses. In this particular design, the Women's Center, use of earth, lime, and bamboo has been done, which better suited to the local climate. Another renowned figure is Sigurd Ban. He has done many works and has designed many homes for the poor victims of disaster. The first example is Carbot Cathedral, which is located in New Zealand. It was used as a transitional shelter and as a replacement for a city's iconic 19th century Anglican church that was damaged in 2011 earthquake. It was constructed as a simple A-frame structure. Another example is Yulin Temporary Elementary School that was built in collaboration with Japanese and Chinese university. Paper tubes were used in this particular design. Onagawa Container Temporary Housing was designed as a multi-story temporary housing complex for survivor of earthquakes and tsunami. Due to the lack of flat land, a 3-story structural framework was made by stacking 20 feet long shipping containers. Kirinda House. In this project, around 100 houses were provided to the Muslim fishing village on the southeast coast of Sri Lanka following the destruction caused by the 2004 tsunami. The aim was to adapt the houses to the local climate and to respond to the users' benefits through direct consultations. Use of local laborers and materials was done in this project. Paper log house was designed for Japan, Turkey, India, following earthquake in 1995, 1999, and 2001 respectively. In this design, water-resistant paper tube were used, and the foundation was created by using donated beer crates loaded with sandbags. The units were easy to dismantle, and the materials were easily disposed or recycled. In case of Nepal, after the Gorkha earthquake, a design team was formed on May 2015 by DUDC. The team was led by architects and engineers from DUDC and supported by World Bank, JICA, Central Cluster Nepal. Initially, designs were produced as per the geography of Nepal, but later the designs were narrowed down to 17 typology. In first volume and in second volume, 12 more typologies were included. Society of Nepalese Architecture had also proposed a demo house in Parapaka, Kathmandu that was built using hollow concrete blocks. It was done in response to the demand of cost-effective houses in both rural and urban areas. Sona also showcased its contribution in the form of 3 individual designs at Bungumati, and the motto was to preserve the historical settlement by using new building technology with traditional building forms. Similarly, Lumanti Support Group for Shelter is another organization which has been focused on preparedness, capacity building, awareness, and mobilizations of youth in DRR. After the earthquake, it also implemented It implemented a project titled Community Managed Post-Earthquake Reconstruction in Urban Poor Communities in Nepal to help the reconstruction of houses in the affected area. From all these case studies, we have listed out the indicators for making resilient community, and these indicators are compared with the idle case studies and the ongoing process of Nepal reconstruction. The first indicator is building safer architecture style. The design must have the architectural essence of the community, but the typical design that is provided in the catalog does not showcase the architectural style of the locality in case of Nepal. Proper use of different technology is seen in the case study, while in Nepal, NBC code is only recommended. Participation of local people can be seen in the case studies, while participation of local people is not observed in all type of reconstruction. We can take the example of Kirinda House, which has made its design in response to the climate, but the wholesome catalog of building design in Nepal was not climate responsive. As Nepal has different climatic zones from Himalayan region to Tarai, same technology or design do not play responsive to the local climate. Similarly, the designs that were provided in the case studies were cost efficient, while that was not actually considered in the Nepal reconstruction. Site analysis was done in most of the case study, but no proper site analysis is done. And the typical building design does not fit in all the areas damaged during the earthquake. All the case studies caters the user's requirement as the first priority with respect to the user's social background, occupation, etc. But in case of Nepal, the typical housing does not cater requirements of all the user group as they belong to different communities, social background, and occupations. Psychosocial recovery has not been considered in both the cases. The climate responsive design is ultimately energy efficient design, but energy efficient techniques are not mentioned in design catalogs. Use of local materials. In Kirinda House, the principal material that was used was compressive earth blocks that was locally available in Sri Lanka, and also the furnitures were made from the rubber trees, which were locally sourced natural materials. In Hewland Temporary Elementary School, the buildings were designed with using paper tubes, which were cheap, recyclable, reusable, and readily available on site. But in case of Nepal, use of local materials is not encouraged in the design. Instead, use of new materials has been introduced. These are the conclusions drawn from this study. Architects bear the optimum skill and knowledge of rebuilding, but they are often overlooked during reconstruction and preparedness phase in DRMC. This is due to the bad governance, unethical, unprofessional bureaucratic approaches, and lack of policies. Architects and architectural process contribute greatly to the resilience and sustainability of community. But the problem here is the architects focus on resilient buildings are not integrally involved with communities who are suffering with hazards in new building. These are the recommendations. Build back better principle can be achieved if the solution are provided by experts that includes architects and planners who possess adequate knowledge of sustainability and resilience. Installation of concept of architecture innovation is recommended. New intervention and solution need to be introduced and accepted by key professional and administration in DRM system, and justify a sole motto for architect, build back better and result in a more comprehensive approach of rebuilding homes to rebuild lives. These are the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Srishti, for your presentation. Now, floor is open for question, answer, or comment, if any. I am requesting floor to have a questions or comment, if any. Thank you very much. Seems there is no questions or comment to the Srishti. Srishti, basically, you know, what your top research paper topics is role of architects in building disaster resilient communities. But what I found during your presentation is you are more concentrated on the building design itself. That is also only the post-disaster. Yeah, that is what I've found in your presentation. Therefore, maybe I don't know. Yeah, disaster resilient communities. Mainly, you have to go through the what does mean by the resilient communities disaster. Yeah, disaster resilient communities. You have to come with the global practices parameters, then link with the architect, and then you have to test it. Yeah, and I don't think you are talking about broader sense of resilient of communities, but you are more focused on your paper is on the building design. And another one, my observation or suggestion, or how to say, I am little bit how to say worried. Mainly your conclusion. Yeah, in your conclusion, you had put some words of unethical, political, or something like that. You know, that is the general. You know, the journalist or something like that. They can comment like that, but not the research finding. If research finding, you have to have a sufficient data, evidence, or something like that, because this is the research paper. Therefore, your conclusion is more on like a journalist comment. Yeah. Therefore, I suggest you to go back and try to make it more on the research base. And also, you as I mentioned, you are not looking as a global on the disaster resilient communities, but you are looking on the post-disaster reconstruction building design. Yeah. And one more, I heard from you on the prototype design. You said there is no inclusion of climate responsive design, but in our prototype design there is a CSEB designs, and similar to that also, which claim those are the climate responsive design. Therefore, you go and look on it. Yeah, I suggest you to those things. Yeah, this is for Srishti, and this is very important topics. Yeah, mainly you have to go back and look on the some of the aspect and make it more research paper. Yeah, that's all. And I had a first of all, I would like to thank you all paper presenters and also the co-author, choosing this very prominent or very important area, because nowadays, we are suffering from the this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic disaster. And this is not only in the one village or one community or the one types of people, it's a global. Almost all countries globally, they are suffering from the COVID-19. Therefore, this is the very important area, the disaster risk reduction or the disaster risk management. And this is the new areas of the research also, because COVID-19 basically raised some of the questions. For example, we will have a flood in Tarai in the near future. But due to the COVID, will the response team will go to search and rescue those people, because you have a problem with the social distancing. Therefore, there are so many areas, very important areas. And I congratulate and thank you guys to choose the topics in the disaster risk management. And another one, my observation is basically, we have a little bit hangover of thesis presentation and this research paper presentation, or the paper is different. Therefore, what I found is most of the paper presenter have a hangout from the thesis presentation. Therefore, we have to little bit learn to make difference from the thesis presentation. For example, you had mentioned your supervisor or the need of the study, objective or something like that. In the paper, you should not mention those types of things. Paper is more on your problem statement, your methodology, and their findings. And it has to, all the findings or conclusion has to be justified or validated by the existing theory or the practices, established practices. That is what there should be. Therefore, this with this, I again congratulate you. Thank you, you all paper presenters and co-authors. And also, I would like to express my sincere thanks to IOE, this 8th graduate conference management team, and also all the colleagues who is putting their great effort to success in this very crisis time of COVID-19. Thank you, and I would like to congratulate all of you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
हामी एउटा स्न्याप लिन सक्छ त्यो प्रेजेन्टरहरुको र हाम्रो? Thank you very much. Thank you. एउटा सबैजना भएको यो प्रेजेन्टर र भएको त्यो यो मेमोरीलाई हुन्छ नि त, उनीहरूलाई रिक्वेस्ट गरे हुन्छ नि त। ऊ सबैजना छ त हैन, एकजना छैन के छ?
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you all the presenters and participants. Thank you very much. Have a good day.